Good evening. On behalf of AT Sri Lanka, I would like to warmly welcome all of you to the revision series done for July 2026 examination by AT Sri Lanka. This examination is very special to you as well as AT Sri Lanka because this is going to be the very first examination conducted for the new curriculum 25-30. So all the subjects across all levels subjected to certain changes in the curriculum. So out of that, risk control and audit was one of those subjects which was subject to substantial considerable change. So having that in mind, AT Sri Lanka decided to do a revision session on this subject to help you all to be successful in the upcoming examination. So to facilitate this, we have invited Ms. Danushka Piyananda, who is very versatile in this subject field. She's attached to University of California as a senior lecturer and currently reading for her PhD. And she's also a fellow member of CA Sri Lanka and fellow member of AT Sri Lanka as well. So she was one of those persons who contributed to the content development of the curriculum as well, including this subject. So she is the most suitable person to guide you all with the subject. So I invite and request all of you to get the maximum benefit out of this session and successfully face the upcoming examination. Over to you, Ms. Darushka.
Right. Thank you very much, Ajani, for that kind introduction. I hope that you all can hear me. Yeah. So I warmly welcome all the students for this revision webinar for risk controls and audit subject. And before we get started, I would like to take this opportunity to thank AAT Institute for inviting me as to facilitate this revision webinar. First, let me share the screen again. Okay. This revision webinar is focusing on our subject auditing, mainly the risk controls and audit subject. First of all, I want to give you a kind of an idea about the AT new curriculum revision, which came into effect in this year. And luckily, you all are the first batch of students that are going to sit for the exam. Those who are going to sit for the exam very first time under this new revised curriculum. So the curriculum revision is mainly centered around the theme of, you can see here, sustainable employment through technological competencies. And I would like to highlight here in this subject, so most of the topics that we covered under the previous syllabus stay the same. That is because, this subject mainly focusing on the key process of auditing, from the engagement acceptance, then to the planning of audit, then conducting of audit, and the audit reporting. So that is the key process of auditing. And then thereafter, we also usually consider about the ethical requirements of professional accountants in public practice, those who are the auditors, and then their quality management requirements. So those are the key topics that comes under this subject. So if you refer to this, the recent past, there were no big changes happened to those standards, auditing standards. Then, the ethical, fundamental ethical requirements and the quality assurance standards. So, therefore, I would say around 70% to 80% of the subject content stay the same if you compare it with the previous syllabus. So why this message is really important for you all? Since you all are getting ready for the upcoming examinations, so you can rely most of the past paper questions and answers, as there's a little changes to the curriculum. So in terms of the changes, so I should highlight that. So those changes are again, focusing on this theme of the curriculum revision, which is the sustainable employment through technological competencies. There are many two perspectives that we have considered in revising the syllabus of this subject. So what are they? The first one is on sustainability perspective, and the other one is on technology side. So look at here. So if you refer to the theme, there are mainly two perspectives that we considered mainly: the sustainability orientations and the IT applications. So when it comes to this sustainability side, so in our field, accounting and auditing, recently there were a lot of changes happening, right? Happening. So especially earlier, these business organizations, they were required to report on their sustainability initiatives on voluntarily basis. But recently, this has actually happened a few years back at the international context. So most of the countries, including, Australia, New Zealand, and when it comes to European countries, they mandated certain sustainability reporting standards. Not only the reporting standard, the assurance standards too. In line with those changes, the CA Sri Lanka also introduced the sustainability reporting and assurance standards on mandatory basis. Now, for the listed entities in Colombo Stock Exchange, for the first, the largest companies, so it's a mandatory requirement for them to report under SLFRS S1, S2, and also the CA Sri Lanka has introduced a new assurance standard that is in line with the international sustainability related assurance standard, ISSA 5000. So those are key changes that has happened in the context of sustainability reporting and assurance. So those perspectives, not that much actually, because when it comes to Sri Lanka, there is no that much of change just happened. Just introductions of those mandatory requirements. So at this level, we are not going to touch that much on those aspects, but we have incorporated those perspectives. And also how the auditors, they should consider the sustainability related risks. So, in the audit process, we usually conduct a risk assessment to identify the business risks and audit risks. So in that case, how we should consider about sustainability related risks, right? So that perspective we incorporated into these, topics. And then the second one is the technological applications, right? So throughout this main audit process, how we can incorporate IT tools. So in practice, if you really look at these big four auditors, they are increasingly incorporating IT tools into day-to-day activities, right? Especially nowadays, they are considering how to incorporate AI, artificial intelligence tools, in order to, smoothly conduct their audit activities. So that perspective, how AI tools, then how machine learnings, how the data analytics, those type of different IT techniques that we can incorporate into our audit process. So those are the key changes that we uh, incorporated into the new curriculum. So in addition to that, this the image gives you. I have extracted it from the curriculum document of AAT Sri Lanka. So see here, these are the new topics or the new chapters that we have included in the revised curriculum or revised study text that I think you all have access to now, right? So, especially if we consider about the content, this the topic 6 and 7, the chapter 6 and 7 are the newest addition. Okay, if you compare the content with the previous syllabus, so these two chapters we have newly added to the curriculum. And especially, I advise you to consider about the weightage assigned for each topic. Why this is important to you is so you can get kind of an idea on the effort that you should put in under each topic when you are getting ready for the examination. Since you all are now studying for the examination, this is really important. See here, the first chapter, uh, it it the weightage assigned is only 5%, right? And so once you refer to the study text, you may realize that the content also a little bit less because the weightage is only 5%. The key chapter that you should mainly focus is the chapter 5 that gives you 25% of weightage because it includes the key auditing process, the risk assessment, audit process, and audit reporting. This is the key chapter that you need to focus more. And then the chapter 2, chapter 3, that gives you both the 20% of weightage in each chapter. So you need to, give more weight in your study plan for these two chapters too. And then all other chapters, see here, so those gives you either 10% or below that. The chapter 4 gives you 5%, and then the new chapters, fundamental of enterprise risk management, that gives you 10%, the fundamentals of internal audit 8%, and the ethical requirement and quality management, so that the last chapter gives you only 7%. Get that understanding too. It's really important. And then, so when it comes to today, a plan for our discussion, so I mainly consider about this chapter 6 in today's discussion. That is because it's a new chapter, right? And especially since now you all are studying for the examination, so we know that you usually every time look into past paper questions. So if you refer to past papers, you may not find the relevant questions and suggested answers for this new content. So we thought of, giving some kind of an understanding about the expectations for the examinations for these new content. So that is why we choose the chapter 6 for the discussions of today revision webinar. So if you move to the chapter 6, so I have listed here the intended learning outcomes, the ILOs of this chapter. So usually our students, they don't uh, pay attention to that much on learning outcome. So when I was studying for my examinations, so that was the same situation, right? Um, that is because so you just um, get the study text or your other learning materials that you get from your classes. So you just go through those, you know, whatever the notes that you get, right? So whatever the, content that is included in the study text, you usually don't pay attention on the intended learning outcomes. So let me explain why you should, get familiar with the intended learning outcomes, right? So the learning outcomes are the expectations that we have um, from the level 3 students once you finish your studies. So you should be able to do these things, and these intended learning outcomes are directly connected with the examination process, because the examiners usually test your understanding on these aspects. So now, considering chapter 6, now see the first um, ILO is you should be able to define the enterprise risk management and explain its purpose. You should be able to explain the purpose. So now, considering these intended learning outcomes, the examiner can, include the questions in the question paper, giving a particular scenario and asking you to explain the purpose. Why this company should you know um, adapt, or they should implement the enterprise risk management. So every time, so the examiner try to test your understanding under these intended learning outcome. And so your study content, so if you refer to the study text, the study content also organized um, as per this intended learning outcome. So therefore, so I first included the list of intended learning outcomes of chapter 6. So let us first have a look on so what those intended learning outcomes. So the very first one, so you should be able to define this enterprise risk management, and you should be able to explain the purpose of this in the business context. And the second one, see, I have highlighted the keywords or the key focus under each learning outcome. So you should be able to explain the element. So see here, you should be able to explain, not just the identify, right? So you should advance your knowledge, and you should be able to explain the element of enterprise risk management, including very important consideration has been given to risk appetite, right? So later I will explain you what the meanings are. Then explain the integrations of ERM in key business processes. So when you come to chapter 6, so you have a very good understanding about the business environment, the business organization, and the key business processes of a business organization. Because if you refer to chapter 2, it is on key business processes, right? So then under chapter 6, we discussed how to integrate enterprise risk management into these key business processes, the procurement process, cash management process, PPE management process, right? So, but you should be able to explain how you could integrate ERM into the key business processes. Then you should be able to identify the benefits of doing such integrations. So what benefits that you can gain through such integration? And then you should be able to explain the process of risk management. So by this time, when you come to chapter 6, so you have kind of an understanding about the risk management process, because we usually discuss this under, see here, chapter uh, 3, risk management framework. So we have kind of an understanding about what is a risk, so how to mitigate risk, and how to build up a appropriate risk management framework for a business organization. So you have now that basic understanding, and with that understanding you come to chapter 6. right? So again, in the chapter 6, we have kind of a discussion on process of risk management, and then the different types of risks that a business organization face, that comes from both internal environment and external business environment. So this, I would say, the sixth one, fifth one, and yeah. So this, the business key business processes. So that understanding you have already been developed. So when you engaged with previous chapters, so just to little bit advance your knowledge under chapter 6. And then you should be able to identify the techniques of mitigating this. This one also we uh, usually discuss under chapter 3, and then so you advance your knowledge under chapter 6 too. So then explain the importance of selecting appropriate risk mitigation uh, method, right? So those are the intended learning outcomes, and then let's have a look on the content of the chapter. So the first of all, the first learning outcome is on the definition of enterprise risk management and the purpose of it. What is the purpose, right? So now this definition again has been given considering the definitions given by the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of Tradeway Commission, the COSO, which is a US-based the non-governmental organization which usually work on internal controls and the internal auditing side. So they have implemented a framework called COSO framework, which is a well-established the framework for the enterprise risk management. So that discussion under this chapter is, centered around that framework. So as per that framework, it highlight that so this enterprise risk management is not a separate function or a department within a business organization. A business organization comprises different sub department or division. So for an example, in a bank, so we have IT division, then we have credit division, then we have HR division, research and development division, so customer service center. So likewise, the bank comprises different divisions, right? So, so this enterprise risk management is not that type of a different division within the organization. Instead, all the people within all these divisions, all these every divisions, they need to, integrate enterprise risk management into their day-to-day activities, right? So that means, so the entire organization, people at the top and as well as the people at the bottom, they should work together to, respond to identify the risk and respond to the risk under their scope of work, right? So that is what the enterprise risk management is. So, so this is not an easy task, right? So the high level responsibility is with the senior management team and the board of directors at the top, and then the senior management team to build up that culture within the business organization, right? So every one of us within the business organization is well aware about what risks are, how those risks would arise, and then how to respond to those risks. Because so we cannot, it's not the only the responsibility of the risk management team to identify the risk and respond to them. So we cannot isolately take this function. Instead, we should integrate it into all the function. It is not only IT department, they engaged with the risk management, because the risks are emerged, and risks are the business exposed to risks under different functions, right? In all different functions within the business organization. So the HR department exposed to different risks of their function is to, retain the very good people within the organization. So there is a risk that the IT experts or maybe finance experts or banking experts, they may left the organization. So there's a risk that the HR department exposing into. What happened if that type of a risk occurred? So the bank would not be able to uh, conduct their functions appropriately. So therefore, uh, so if that type of a risk happen, it affect to entire business organization. It's not only affecting to HR people. It's affect the entire business organization. So therefore, so all the people, everyone within the business organization should work together in their scope of work to identify the risk, to communicate those risks properly to the responsible parties, and to identify the risk mitigation actions and to implement them, right? So that's what the enterprise risk management is. The when we are developing this, the enterprise risk management concept within the business organization, the very important aspect is to build up a risk aware culture, right? That means every one of us, like I explained you earlier, the people at the very low level, those who are directly involved with the operations of the organization, the operational level employees, and the people at the very top, the board of directors, the senior management team, middle management. So the every one of us, aware the risks, and we talk about the risk, and also we aware about the risk responses, right? And also we take the responsibility as well. So for an example, now assume so there's a indications that of fire at the factory premises. So then so the people, they know what to do. So from where they can exit, so where to assemble, right? The assembly point is where, so they know everything, and how to operate the fire extinguishers, right? How to communicate, so what are the emergency contact details, right? So they are very well aware about the procedures, the emergency procedures that they must take. So that is the risk aware culture. That's kind of an example that I can give to you, right? So that building up that risk aware culture is the responsibility of the board of directors and the senior management team. So then coming towards this purpose of ERM, see, the purpose is to create value, then the preserve value, and the realize the value. So the ERM, enterprise risk management, help organization to create value, not only to create value, then to preserve the value, that means to protect the value, and then realize the value. So for an example, now think um, so let me first give an example that you can clearly understand with your personal experience. Now, assume these days you are getting ready for your examination, and I believe that you are studying, right? These days, and you are really busy with your studies. So now assume, so while you are studying for the examination, so you eat a mango, right? So then you think, so so while you eating the mango, so you think about planting the mango seed, right? So you stop studying for a while, and so you go down to the garden and dig a hole and plant the mango seed, right? Now you created a value. So you know how valuable this mango plant, right? Because it gives you mango harvest. So remember that song uh, in your early days. So you may have heard about that song between a kid and his grandfather අර මොකද කියන්නේ මොනවද CA මොකද කරන්නේ මොකටද ඔබ ඔය බිම හාරන්නේ කියලානේ. ඒකේ අර කියවෙන ලස්සනට බෑටයක් සිටවනවා. ඒක අඹ ගහ ග්‍රෝ වුණාට පස්සේ අඹ පළදාව පරම්පරා ගානකට ගන්න පුළුවන්. So now see, so you planted a mango seed and you created the value. Now assume since you are really busy with your examination for the next couple of weeks, so you haven't visited the your backyard and the where that you planted the mango seeds, so you forgot to visit there, right? So then later on, after a few days of the exams or few weeks of the exam is over, so you now remember, oh, I planted a mango seed and what happened, right? So then you go back to the backyard and see what's happening. So, but since you haven't treated the mango seeds after you planted it, so you even can't locate it now. So the grass has grown, and since you didn't water the plant, so you cannot see the mango plant, right? So you created a value, but you didn't preserve it. You didn't protect it. Instead, emerging while you were studying for the examination, in each day you took 5 to 10 minutes and you went to the backyard and you clean the place around the where you planted the mango seeds, and also you watered it, and now so you see a well-grown mango tree. See, now you created the value, so you planted a mango seed and you preserved it, you protected the value, right? So you treated it very well. You watered it, you add the fertilizers, you clean the place, so you protected the value. And then now you have a well grown mango tree and it's ready to harvest in the next season, right? So once you get the harvest, so you can enjoy mango with your family, and even you can share with your neighbors, and you can share mango harvest with people around you. So that means you are realizing value. See, this enterprise risk management enable you to create value, preserve value, and realize value because you identify the risks of the not treating the mango seeds after you planting it, right? අපි එක හිමම අතහැරලා දැම්මොත් මේක පැලවෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකේ අවදානමක් තියෙනවා. So then you need to identify that risks, and so see now you got the correct mitigation action. Every day you visited the place, you cleaned it around, and then you added fertilizers, you watered it. See the mitigations actions you took. And then now you are enjoying the benefit. You are realizing the value, right? So now take this understanding into business context. So these business organizations out there, they usually every time create value. So they introduce new product, they go for new market, right? They create value. Some organizations, since they have a very good, well-established risk management framework or the enterprise risk management, so they preserve value all the time. That is why they become very successful giant business organization. Especially if you see these listed entities in Colombo Stock Exchange, they have a very good enterprise risk management integrations into their business processes. But when it comes to this, some business organization, uh, especially the small entities, they don't have that much of, well-established risk management activities. So some of these business organizations, they failed, right? Because although they created value, they don't preserved or they don't, protect the values. That is the reason. When it comes to business context, I would like to give you kind of an example. Now, see, in Sri Lankan context, so there is a growing concern about the nutritional level of our school children, right? So, due to this, the severe economic difficulties, some children they attend school without having breakfast, and also there are concerns about the nutritional level of our infants too. So considering these social consequences, now let's assume Ambevela farm, right? So you all know Ambevela dairy products, so that Ambevela farm. So they conducted a market research and they identify the social consequences. And now they are going to take this as an opportunity to introduce a new product, let's say a type of, let's say, a milk with that nutritional requirement for our school children, right? So they introduce a new product to the market to, address that opportunity, which means they created a value. Now, the management people there, they cannot stop this now. Yes, we have created a value, we have introduced a new product, they cannot stop their journey now. Instead, they are exposing a lot of risks around this, because this is a, food product and they offered it to school children. So they need to be very careful about the food safety. If something wrong happens, so it could create a huge threat to our children's health. And also there are a lot of compliance requirement for food products, right? So therefore they need to identify these risks, risk of non-compliances, threats to the product, the food safety. They need to identify these risks and they need to consider about the possible risk mitigation actions. So they need to identify these risks in advance, right? If something wrong happen, so these dairy products, so usually quickly some of the bacterial infections can be uh, happen very quickly for this type of a food product. So therefore they need to consider about that risk and they need to set the very good quality standard for the entire process of their production, from milking stage to the processing stage, and even after that packing stage and distribution stage, they need to consider about the product quality maintenance. And they need to make aware all the people about their quality standards, right? In order to, avoid any possible defects, production defects. And also they need to consider about all the compliance requirement in order to avoid the compliance risk of non-compliances, and what are the food safety requirements, the laws and regulations in Sri Lanka. So how we should, um, comply with those requirements. So they need to make a very good survey and identify the relevant law and regulation. And then they need to educate and train their employees to comply with those quality management requirement. And at the same time, there is another risk of, the risk coming from the external environment, the risk of competition. It's not that the only dairy product producer, the Ambevela farm is not only the dairy product producer in Sri Lanka. Instead, we have multinational companies like Fonterra, which gives us a huge competition. So therefore, in order to, mitigate that risk, so we need to every time do, some novelties for our product. Maybe we can uh, be more competitive by offering it at a very affordable price for our school children, or they can combine with the government and, uh, they can, enter into kind of an agreement to supply these product to the government in a particular program, kind of a, welfare program. So likewise, they need to, be more competitive, and also they can, introduce new types of product in future, and also they can change their product, maybe the packages. So likewise, they can bring novelties to uh, protect their competitiveness, right? So that type of things they need to do to preserve the value, to maintain the value. And also, at the end of the day, they will be able to realize the value. See the purpose, right? So, when we have a well established enterprise risk management practice in place within our business organization, it enables us to, be more resilient. So the term resilient, resilient කියලා කියන අපි සිංහලෙන් කියන ළමයි ඔරොත්තු දීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා, දරා ගැනීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා business එකට. So the very good example is COVID-19. So after COVID-19, most of the organizations, they were struggling to carry out their normal business operations. Some of the organization business entities, maybe you might have some experience with a certain business organization in your area, they had to shut down their operation. But some organizations, within even COVID-19, although it was a risk, it was kind of a struggling situation for them, they find out certain opportunities within that risk. Since they have that very good understanding about risk management, okay, and they have taken the appropriate measure for the risk mitigation. Within that risk, they came across certain opportunities and they took advantages of those opportunities. Very good example is these education service providers, right? So at the very initial time of COVID-19, they were struggling to, conduct their day-to-day activities. They were thinking of how to connect with students, how to gather students, because we couldn't physically gather students. And those days we were not using these Teams or Zooms or online so audio education platform that much for providing these services. And then later on, they some entities, they just shift their business model, this service provision from physical mode to remote mode, right? So when it comes to this professional education providing organizations, they could capture a lot of market through that, right? uh, so earlier it was the students who are around in our area, they came to classes, but now they could able to offer their service to the entire country. So the bounce back, right? So through the struggling time, we, navigate that challenges and come back to our normal scenarios. Now, instead our physical mode, now we are offering the services on online mode. And when it comes to, universities, so I'm having some experience with them. They even bounce forward, right? So without getting back to the situation where they were, instead they went one step further, because that gives them an opportunity to offer their degree program even for the foreign students, right? They capture even the foreign market through remote offering of these studies, not only lecturing, but also conducting examinations on remote mode. See, through this proper identifications of risk, risk assessment, and risk responses, the organization, they can actually navigate through these challenging situations, and they can actually go one step further. And so, they can create a lot of values, and they can, realize those values. So that is the very important aspect of this enterprise risk management. So what I want to highlight here is in the definition, see, the enterprise risk management is not a responsibility of one team. Okay. Instead, it is the responsibility of the entire organization. The very important aspect is the developing the risk aware culture within the organization. Instead, keep in mind, the traditional perspective is it is the responsibility of the risk management team, risk committee. Okay? සමහර අය කියනවා නෑ මේක අපේ responsibility එකක් නෙමෙයි අපි ඒක ගැන එච්චර අවධානය යොමු කරන්න ඕනේ නෑ. Yeah, so one student asked to get a break. Yes, of course. So you can get a break, but now what is the time now? So if you want a break, so yeah, so we'll take a break, okay, for all of us. So then I can, continue with other topics. Yeah, it's just 2 minutes or 3 minutes break. Yeah, good, all good. Okay. Okay, coming back to the discussion. So before we move into our next topic, so there is a question asking whether the paper structure is the same as previous year's papers or the same as the pilot paper. The paper structure is same. So like we have part A, B, and C, and that the scenario based questions comes under part B and C, and the short answer questions comes under part A. So that structure is so you can have kind of an idea referring to pilot paper. But the content little bit different with the new revisions. Don't purely rely on the past papers since we have revised the curriculum. So the content is little bit different, but the structure would be the same, right? Okay, so now we discussed about the definition of the enterprise risk management, and then so our second um So I have few questions, but let me take those questions at the end of the session, right? So certain questions, because those are relating to examinations, not the topic that we are discussing. So therefore, I'll take those the addressing those questions towards the end of the session, right? Okay. Now the second one is explain the element of ERM, including the risk appetite and how it influences decision making. Now, see, so again, this discussion is, discussion connects with the COSO framework. And so this COSO ERM cube can be used to, get a very good understanding. So that is presented in this image. Now, see, there are mainly five elements which have been explained under COSO framework for the element as elements of enterprise risk management. So, what are they? The governance and culture, strategy and objective setting, performance, review and revision, information communication, and reporting. So here, the governance and culture means at the very top of our business organization. So how we see the risks. So because in some business organization, the governance, including the board of directors and senior management team, they are very keen on risk management. That is because they have very good understanding on the risk management, and also they know the benefits that they can gain out of it, right? So they are very keen on it. Some organization, they don't care that much, right? So therefore, at the very top, the governance is the way how the risks are perceived by the top management and the governance team is really matter. And based on that, so we develop the culture within the business organizations so we can identify whether we have a risk aware culture or not, a risk aware culture or not. So, like I explained earlier, that building that risk aware culture is a responsibility of the governance, those charged with governance, right? So at the very top, we have this, the governance and culture, how the governance teams, they look about risks, whether they seriously take risk into considerations or not. And then the strategy and objective setting. So this understanding again link with your understanding about strategic management. I hope that you have covered certain topic of management like planning, implementation and monitoring, that aspect, the strategic management perspective. So in here, the strategy means the business strategy of organization means the long-term directions of the organization after another 5 to 10 years time. Where should we go? Okay. So that is the strategy. And then, so once we set our that top priorities, the vision, mission, then we need to establish our short-term orientations, including goals and objectives. So that's how that process comes, the planning stage. So in enterprise risk management, one key element is at the time of that planning process, we need to consider about risk, right? So because otherwise we will set some unrealistic goals, isn't it? For example, now see, a business organization in Sri Lankan company now decide to have their goal or their, one of their goal as getting 50% sales increment in next year. And now assume that this company is into a kind of a production which is based on crude oil, right? Now see, At the time of setting the goals, our goal is next year sales increment. Now we need to consider about the what risks that coming towards us when we achieving this goal. So the risk is very simply the risk is our inability to meet the set targets. So if there is any variations between our expected results and actual results, that cause of mainly because of the risks that we face, right? So now we are about to set the goals of achieving 50% sales increment next year, and we are now in the production. Uh, the company is into production, which is based on crude oil related the product. Now there is a risk. What is the risk? Risk of sourcing raw material because of this Middle East, the war, right? So time to time, so we face that risk of getting or sourcing required raw material. So now we need to consider about that risk while setting this target. Would that be possible? Okay, can we able to achieve this 50% with the current risk? And also at the same time, so now the we are facing economic downturn. So as a result, so the purchasing power of our consumers are not that much at a satisfactory level. So as a result, the customer demand also, we won't be able to get their demand as we plan. So there's another risk. So we need to consider about these risks when we are setting our objectives and see whether we can, whether we are, setting realistic targets. So therefore, under enterprise risk management, one key element is setting objectives considering the risks. Okay, so at the time of planning, we need to consider the risk. It is not that we set unrealistic goals and then thereafter considering the risks around it, right? And then take the mitigation action. No, it's not like that. At the very first time, when we set up the goals, we need to consider about the risk around it and then set the realistic goals. And then the performance. Performance is all about risk management process. So in this, the course of ERM cube, so this the governance and culture comes under this internal environment. So then the objective setting. So all these other aspect comes under performance stage. The performance means risk management. So we need to identify, we need to scan the environment, both internal environment, external environment. We need to identify the risk. You know what are the risk type under chapter 3, understanding. So the risk coming from internal environment, risk coming from external environment. So we need to identify the event or the risks, and then we need to list down all the risks. Okay, the usually organizations, they maintain risk register. In the risk register, they list down all these risks, and then they must assess the risk. So later on, I will explain how to assess the risk in terms of the probability of occurrence and its the impact, right? So we need to assess the risk, and then we need to prioritize the risk, to which risk we should give more attention, we should pay more attention. So then we need to consider about the suitable risk responses that comes under performance. And then we need review and revision. It is not that we develop a risk management framework and say, now we have done with that, because the business environment is, keep changing, right? A lot of changes are happening around us, and we need to every time review whether we have updated our risk management approach, our risk types, risk, responses, right? So we need to continuously engage with this reviewing and revision of the risk management framework. And then the information communications and reporting. So once we identify the risk, once we assess the risk, and once we decide the risk mitigation action, the next very important activity is we need to communicate it within the business organization from top to bottom. All the relevant persons, they need to get aware about how to respond to a risk. So what are the risks? So what are the, the possibility of occurrence of those risks? So then if in any case, if that risks occur, so how to respond it? So we need to properly communicate it. So nowadays, these big organizations increasingly using, the technologies for this purpose. There's a separate system called risk management and governance side. There's a separate the IT, applications. So where we can actually have kind of a dashboard that shows the the significant risks for all the management people, that actually build up a proper communications within the business organization. And also they can real time update that risk register with the at the time that they identify new risks, or at the time that they revise the risk assessment, they can real time update that uh, risk register, and that updated information would be visible on that dashboard for all of us, right? So then when it comes to this the COSO ERM cube, that explain us, mainly three sides of it. So the top side, so that gives us the objectives of the organization, the strategic objectives that we're going to achieve, operational objectives, the reporting objectives, and then the compliance objectives. So when we are going to achieve these objectives, so we are facing risks. So this side of the cube explain how to manage the risk, including these five elements of enterprise risk management. And that enterprise risk management we should implement across the entire business organization. So the business organization comprises, subsidiaries, business units, divisions, entity levels, or at the top level. So at each these level, or across all these levels, so we need to implement this enterprise risk management. That is how that you can apply this COSO ERMQ. So then the very important topic here is risk appetite, right? So the risk appetite means it very simply says how much risks that we are comfortable of taking, right? It's not that the business organizations usually take excessive level of risks. So if you take excessive level of risks, you won't be able to survive, right? You cannot be able to sustain your business operation. So therefore, it's the responsibility of the top management to decide the comfortable level of risks that they can take, right? So it's a strategic decisions that they can take. So for compliance, we accept only moderate level of risks. For finance, we take low risk. We are not going to get a lot of high level of risk. Instead, we go for less risky investment. So likewise, so for each function, so once they decide this risk appetite, so it's the senior management responsibility to set up the risk level for each functions, so each department. So that is how they can operationalize it. So so for your understanding, so this risk appetite is all about the amount of risk that an organization will need to accept. Once they decide it, formally they need to record it under they need to record it under risk appetite statement, right? So that is how they can keep those formal recording within the organization. And it's visible to everyone, and it should be communicate to the relevant personalities. And so sometimes, friend, this risk appetite concept we can closely link with our personal lives too. So among us there are people they don't like to take that much of risks, At the same time, there are some people who love to take risk. The risk averse people and risk lovers, right? So that is their risk appetite. So the risk lovers having huge risk appetite, high level of risk appetite, and risk averse people, they have low level of risk appetite. For an example, think about driving a vehicle. So some drivers, even in the highway, they don't drive at 100 uh, speed limit. Okay, so they are not having that high risk appetite. They drive at 80 per kilometers, 80 speed limit. Okay, they can drive at 100, so that is the maximum speed limit, but they drive at 80 because they don't take that much of risks, right? Their risk appetite is less. Some drivers, although the risk limit is speed limit is 100, they drive at 120. They take risks and their risk appetite is high. And when it comes to investment, some people they don't like to take risks. Like so usually in our parents' generations, a lot of them they don't like to take risk. They never think of investing their money in cryptocurrencies, do they? No. So they invest their money usually in fixed deposits, or maybe they invest in government securities which are risk free, right? So when it comes to investment, there are some people who are risk lovers, right? So they take risk because in investment, higher the risk, higher the return. So they go for risks and they earn more return. So some people, especially these young people, they invest their money in cryptocurrencies where the risk is really volatile, the return is really volatile and the risk is really high, right? See, that is depend on their risk appetite. So you can imagine about your risk appetite. Some people, so we can have our self assessment whether our risk appetite is high or low, right? So සමහරු ඉන්නවා ටිකක් බයයි අලුතෙන් දෙයක් කරන්නනේ. තමන්ගේ අර යන විදිහටම යන්න තමයි කැමති. දැන් ඔයාලගේ එක්සෑම් එක ගැන හිතන්නකො ළමයි. දැන් ටික කාලයයි තියෙන්නේ. සමහරු කැමති නැහැ අලුත් මෙතඩ් එකක් ඇප්ලයි කරන්න ස්ටඩි වලට. right? See, එයා කැමති නැහැ එච්චර රිස්ක් එකක් ගන්න. සමහරු එහෙම නෙමෙයි. So they take kind of new step. They try to test new way of studying. Online materials use කරනවානේ. Group lectures කට්ටිය online එකතු වෙලා Zoom වලින් එහෙම study කරනවා. සමහරු කැමති නැහැ. තනියෙන්ම study කරනවා. අර ඒ වගේ approaches, right? So now when it comes to business organization, the business organizations, the risk appetite is really important when they make different decisions, especially when it comes to strategic decisions. If we have, the low risk appetite, we don't go for, that much of innovative strategies. අලුත් දේවල් කරන්න ටිකක් පහු බහිනවා, right? ලොකු investment, ලොකු ආයෝජන කරන්නේ නැහැ ළමයි. හරි බයයි. So if we have, less the high risk appetite, we quickly go for huge investment into new market, new product, right? New countries, right? So that is how we make decision depending on our risk appetite. And when it comes to financial decision, again, so if the business organization is having high risk appetite, they go for, the new venture. They invest, they merged with new entities, they, expand their business operation, they invest huge money on them, and they go for risk investments. And if we have low risk appetite, we don't do that much. අපි යන විදිහටම fixed growth එකක් තියාගෙන ඉන්න තමයි අපි බලන්නේ. Right? So you can identify different types of business organizations that are around you, right? ඔයාලගේ ඔයා ඉන්න ඒරියා එකේ තියෙන business organization දිහා බලපුවාම, so you may realize whether they have a high risk appetite or low risk appetite. And even in the operational design decisions, so the business that have businesses that have high risk appetite, they quickly, install new technologies, they quickly purchase new machines, they quickly install them within their operations, and they quickly change, production schedules, the techniques that they follow, right? So they take that decisions. Kind of risk, because sometimes so those new technologies, it takes sometimes to adapt, and as a result, sometimes the production delay would be there. But without considering those things, they quickly turn around. But some other organization, they don't go for that because of their low risk appetite, right? I think that you got that understanding. And yeah. So then, how to integrate this enterprise risk management framework for the key business processes, right? So we identified these key business processes under chapter 2, right? Payroll process, procurement process, cash management process, inventory management process, and PPE management process. So now our topic is how to integrate enterprise risk management into these key business processes. So again, that discussion linked with the COSO framework. So the COSO framework gives us the key elements of enterprise risk management. And now, based on these 5 key elements, so you can build up your discussion on how you consider about that governance and culture. Then this strategy and objective setting, and the risk management process, review and revision, communications, all these aspects under each processes, right? So that clear explanations have been given in the chapter study text, and I'm not going to take this discussion at today's session. And if you visit the study text, so you can get a detailed discussion under each process. But my advice is, please don't, memorize take this really hard. මොකද අපේ ළමයි හරිම කැමති කටපාඩම් කරන්න යන්න එපා ළමයි. එහෙම වුණොත් ඔයාලට හරි මහන්සියක් දැනෙයි. මොකද ටිකක් content එක ගොඩාක් තියෙන නිසා. But just get the understanding. Take now ERM having 5 key elements, and how you can integrate that 5 key elements into payroll. How we can decide the governance. At the governance level, we need to set up the policies and procedures for payroll, right? So how the risk management process can be integrated, how to identify the risk of payroll process, how to assess the risks, right? So the risk would be delaying payment to the employees and non-compliances with EPF, ETF, and pay, that type of simply get those ideas into mind, and කටපාඩම් කරන්න නම් යන්න එපා ළමයි, right? So then benefit that we can get through embedding ERM into our processes, operations, strategies, and governance framework. So, traditional perspective is what? It's only the risk management team, they're responsible for risk management. But ERM, so what is the definition? So what is the purpose? All of us, okay, every one of us within the business organization, we have our, responsibility to identify the risk. In our scope of work, HR people, they need to identify the risks of that process, and IT people, they need to identify the risk of that process. Marketing people, they need to identify the risk of that process, and all of us need to then properly communicate these risks across the business organization. Not only the risks, so then the risk assessment, and then the risk mitigation. So thereby we need to build up that risk aware culture, right? So this is a really important things in achieving our set vision, mission, and objectives. අපි ඔක්කොම එකා වගේ වැඩ කරනවා අර අපේ අන්තිම අපේ desired outcome එක vision එක achieve කරගන්න, right? So therefore it gives us a huge benefits, Ramai. So the first one is standardized risk reporting. It is not that the IT department engaged with separate kind of reporting, and then the HR team, they report it in a different way. It's not like that. So now this reporting is integrated in most of the organization. Even they use technologies like I explained earlier, and they have kind of a dashboard that all of us can have a look and identify what are the significant. So that dashboard gives us red lights, right, on hazards, on emergencies, right, and prioritize risks. So then there is a very standard format of reporting. So all of us reporting in the same way. All of us give the rating and assessment for the risk in the same way. High risk, low risk, or moderate risk. It is not that the one department assess the risk and give rating as 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And another department give as high, low, and medium. So it's not like that. All of us using a standard format of reporting. So where at the end of the day, we can integrate all this information in a very clear and smooth manner, right? So the second one is increasing range of opportunities. So like I told you earlier, the risk management is not only about risks, right? The risk management is not only about avoiding risk, it also help organization to identify the opportunities, right? So when we are navigating through the challenges, we will be able to identify the opportunities. So the very good example is that education service providers during COVID-19 period. So I explained you earlier, right? And some restaurant, right? Restaurants වලටත් ළමයි කෑම then earlier. So before COVID-19, so we used to, visit, or we need to physically visit and get the services from the restaurants. But now, so they after COVID-19, so now they most of they got link their services with Uber Eats and got a lot of orders. So they expand their market through that online platforms, right? So likewise, and most of organizations, they earlier used to um, have a physical working setup. But with the COVID-19, now see most of the organizations, so even we can't see a physical location, right? So they work remotely. So that enable them to reduce a lot of their operational cost, right? So that type of, benefits that we can gain. So remember that ERM is not only avoiding risk, and it also help organization to identify opportunities by understanding the relevant risk associated with the whatever the initiatives that we are going to take, right? And then effective compliance coordination. The compliance risk is kind of the very important aspect in risk management. So the most of the organizations are very keen about it. Compliance risk, what are the laws and regulations applicable for our business organization? And it's kind of a responsibility of the with those charged with governance to ensure that our business organization is compliant with all the applicable laws and regulation. So it's not only we are compliant with, the complying with the reporting standards, right? The reporting requirement. So apart from that, there are a lot of other compliance requirement of our organization, applicable for organization. For an example, labor matters. The labor law is there, EPF, ETF, and then other how to, resolve a labor dispute. So what are the relevant procedures? So those matters. And then environmental law is there, and food safety law, right? So a lot of other relevant laws and regulations. So then how to, comply with all the applicable laws and regulations. So that kind of, the benefit that we can gain. And at the end, so we will be able to ensure that as a responsible business organization, so we comply with all the applicable law and regulation. Then the greater efficiency and resource allocation. Now see, these are the enterprise risk management. So that risk management process We identify risk, we assess the risk, the very important aspect. So we identify the risk, then we assess the risk. The risk assessment is mainly focusing on two key aspects. See, the likelihood of occurrence and the impact. So if that happen, if that particular risk incident happen, the impact, whether it is low, moderate or high. So likelihood of occurrence, whether it is unlikely, likely or highly likely. So in terms of these two perspectives, we assess risk. For an example, now think a manufacturing organization is assessing a possible risks as, um, you know, um, uh, possible risks as the machine breakdown, the possible machine breakdown. So now this is the type of the risk. They identify the risk. Now we need to assess the risk. For the risk assessment, so we need to consider about the likelihood of occurrence. Now we take all the details of machines, including when we purchase the machine, how long we have been using the machines for the productions. Okay, maybe it's 5 years, 4 years, and then the regular maintenance that we usually do, so those type of information we get, and then we assess the likelihood of occurrence. Now we are in the conclusions that these machines are very old, and now the some noises are coming out, and the vibration is really high. So it's highly likely that possible machine breakdowns would be happen in near future. Highly likely, right? Highly likely. And so assume that this is the only machine in our production flow. And if there is a downtime, so our entire productions will stop. So if that machine breakdowns happen, the impact is really high. So then that place in this field, this location, see here, great current with. Okay, so see, the impact is high and the likelihood of occurrence is high. So then this risk should be prioritized. This risk should be prioritized, and we should allocate more resources for this. We should allocate fund from our budget either to replace the machine, to buy a new machine, and or we need to provide the regular maintenance, required maintenance, or else we can allocate some budget to uh, to purchase a software. So nowadays we are using that predictive maintenance software, a sensor that we can attach to the machine that gives us kind of, red lights if there is a possible machine breakdown. That sensor capture the noises and, uh, vibrations, that kind of indications of breakdown. And then it gives us kind of, forecast for a possible breakdown. So we can invest on that. We can, allocate funds. So we can prioritize this. And also we can allocate resources, include time, then people, and then money. And the people, so we can, allocate the most qualified technicians to, closely work with this machine and to identify any possible breakdowns and to get the corrective action. So therefore ERM enable us to efficient resource allocation. So identify the high impact, high likelihood of occurrence risks categories, the risks with high impact and high likelihood of occurrence, and allocate more resources, pay more attention towards mitigating those risks. Enhance enterprise resilience. මේ කතා කරා කලින් resilience, the ඔරොත්තු දීමේ හැකියාව, එහෙම නැත්නම් දරා ගැනීමේ හැකියාව, right? If something unexpected happen, so how strong the business organization to navigate through those challenges, right? Um, and then the process of risk management. So that process, start with risk identification. So like I told you earlier, so we need to scan the environment. We need to be on alert of the possible changes or the whatever the changes happen in the business environment, and we need to identify the risks, okay, through those events, right? So we should identify the risk, and then we need to assess the risk. And for the risk assessment purpose, so you can use this type of risk matrix. Some organization, they use the 3 by 3 matrix. Some organization, they use 5 by 5 matrix, right? And then so you can make the risk assessment and thereby prioritize the risk, like I told you earlier. So for that purpose, I would like to share the uh, study text with you, because in the study text there is a very good example for you to get a kind of an understanding. So wait, let me share it. Mm, yeah, it's here. Yeah, I hope that you all can see this study text. So now, so assume you as the Chief Risk Officer of Plaza PLC. So your team has identified the following risk. So you have identified three types of risks. Remember the risk management process. First, you need to identify the risk. Now, the management team of this company, they have identified the risk, three types of risk: cybersecurity breaches, workplace safety incidents, and the supply chain disruption. So then the each with the likelihood and impact, the likelihood of occurrence and the impact. So see, the first one is there is a high likelihood of occurrence, the high impact. And then the workplace safety incident, මොකක් හරි අනතුරක් වෙලා සේවකයෙකුට injuries වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ දෙයක්. Likelihood is unlikely because you have taken all the safety measures so far. So it's highly unlikely. They assess the likelihood as highly unlikely, and if occurred, the impact is low, right? Because so you have, the first aid the facilities in house, and also the employees have been trained to respond into that type of situation very well, so that kind of incident won't make that much of impact. So then supply chain disruption, likely, and if happens, there's a high impact. So they have assessed the likelihood of occurrence and the impact. So you have given those information. Now you are required to prioritize the risk and proper appropriate mitigation strategies. Now, how to prioritize the risk? Depending on the likelihood and the impact. So you can place these risks under that risk table, 3 by 3 table. So once you place the risk, depending on their likelihood and impact. Now see here. So you can assign color codes. So likely and highly likely and highly, this should be a high impact, not highly likely, high impact. So now see, cybersecurity risk is highly likely, and if happen, that would create a huge impact. So that should be the number one priority for you all. So you need to allocate more resources to respond into this risk. Okay, maybe you need to invest in, placing a firewall to safeguard against cybersecurity attack. And then the second one, the workplace safety, it's highly unlikely and the impact is low. So you don't want to worry that much about it, right? So you can place it as, three, if you rank these risks, if you prioritize these risks, and supply chain disruption, highly likely, high impact, but likely. So you can take it as the second one. And then for each risk, so you need to uh, propose the risk mitigation or appropriate risk mitigation. So, we have risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk transfer, risk acceptance. So, that type of risk mitigation strategy. So, you need to propose suitable one. For the cybersecurity breaches, we cannot avoid, we cannot, transfer that risk. Instead, we should reduce the risk, incorporating the required measures, the IT, the technological measures. Like, so here you can establish a firewall. So you can conduct regular security audits. You can provide employees cybersecurity training. So that type of risk reduction actions you can take. Then for the supply chain disruption, so again, you can take risk reduction, right? This risk is also high and likelihood also high. So you can take the supply chain could cause delays, increase cost, and loss of business continuity. So as the risk mitigation, so it proposed to take a risk transfer, so you can take a insurance, and also you can propose a risk reductions too here, and you need to justify it properly. So maybe you can enter into a contract with alternative suppliers, right? So likewise, and workplace safety incidents. So you can, placed it's the low priority, and you can take risk reduction, right? So likewise, get yourself familiar with how to, apply this concept into the real world scenarios. Uh, Wait, let me share the presentation again. Uh, yeah. Yeah, okay. Then our discussion is on the types of risk arising from internal and external environment. So this topic we have already covered under chapter 3, right? So again, kind of advancing your knowledge under this chapter. And so risk mitigation, so you can have either risk reduction, right? So risk transfer means without taking that risk controlling or risk mitigations under your responsibility, you can transfer it to someone else, right? The very good risk transfer mechanism is insurance, right? So you can transfer that risks to an insurance company, and so if something happen, you can get that claims. So when it comes to financial or risks, the risk transfer, very good example is hedging, right? Hedging instruments, so you can enter with the forward contracts or future contracts with financial institutions to transfer the risk of the exchange rate volatility or interest rate volatility to them, right? Then you can avoid the risks or you can accept the risks, right? So some decisions, so for an example, if you are thinking of going for a new market, and if you assess that the risk is really high, right, that you won't be able to capture that market share, so then maybe you can decide not going to that market. You can avoid that risks, right? So the risk acceptance is also there. Some organization, they take that risk, right? They accept that risk. So because the risk cannot be avoided, so they accept the risk, right? So there are certain examples given in the study text. Please leisurely go through the study text and get yourself familiar with these risk mitigation techniques, and the importance of selecting appropriate risk mitigation strategy. So when you are selecting the risk mitigation strategy, you need to consider about this aspect: the nature, likelihood, and potential impact of the risk, And also you need to consider about the cost benefit consideration, because sometimes so you might have to incur a lot of cost, huge cost of maybe reducing the risk, um, and the benefit that you're getting out of it is really less. So you need to consider about the cost benefit consideration as well. So in that case, maybe without reducing or taking that the risk reductions, so maybe you can accept the risks, right? So alignment with organizational objectives, to which extent that risk mitigation activity align with the objectives of the organization. And also if you make a wrong decision, okay, if you use kind of ineffective risk management within your organization, those may create new risks. Those would expose the organization into new risks, right? අර ගහෙන් වැටුණ මිනිහට ගොනාන්න වගේ වැඩක් තමයි එතකොට වෙන්නේ. So then regular review and adjustment, and the benefit of selecting the right risk mitigation strategy. If you go towards the very end of the chapter, so there are a list of benefits that you can gain through selecting the right mitigation strategy. So I think that is the end of the presentation. And then, so I would like to discuss with you what type of questions that you can actually expect under this chapter. So for that purpose, I would like to share the pilot paper that gives you kind of understanding on it. Because in the pilot paper, so you can find out the relevant question for that. Yeah, here. Yeah. So see, the pilot paper comprises 3 sections. So like you can see in the past papers, section A, section B, and section C, and see the marks allocation for each section. And section A usually cover up kind of, short answer questions, right? You don't want to, build up your arguments or discuss them or explain the answers in that much of detail. But when it comes to section B, so a bit of, scenario-based questions that gives you 10 marks for each questions. For 30 marks, 3 questions will be there under section B. And in the section C, so, kind of the case-based questions would be there for 25 marks each. I think it's for 2 questions. Yeah, 2 questions. Yeah. And so if you refer to this question 9 in pilot paper, yeah, so you can find the relevant question from this chapter, right? So see here, explain 3 ways in which in the integrating ERM into Medcare Private Limited business process enhance its operation. And then explain 2 benefits of embedding ERM into Medcare's operation, strategic and planning and governance. So that benefits are you can take as it is from the study text as we discussed about the benefits, right? And so for the first question, so it actually mainly depend on the case that you have given. So for that purpose, you should read the case carefully. And it's a hospital in this case. So Medcare Private Limited operates a chain of private hospital and specialist medical center across Sri Lanka. And the company offers general and surgical care, laboratory testing, and outpatient services. So those are their operations. And with demand for private healthcare increasing, the company has expanded to 6 hospitals. Now they are into expanding their business organization and is planning to open 2 more by early 2026. In light of recent industry risk with the introductions of new personal data protection law in Sri Lanka, the board of directors has discussed implementing ERM framework into their business, right? So currently, risk management is done informally. Look at here the traditional perspective of risk management. They they have kind of a risk management aspect in their business, but it is not that formal one. It's an informal one at the department level. Each department they are working isolate basis and not integrated into the company strategic planning or governance processes. So now they are going to integrate it. So the first two question is on that perspective, asking you how that integration enhance their operation. Definitely such integrations, so would enhance the operational effectiveness of the business organization. You know how? Because we discussed. So the it creates the risk aware culture where every one of us work together in the risk management, identifying risk, assessing risks. So, getting the risk mitigations, and all of us know the risks very well. And it actually help us to achieve the our desired outcome or the vision, mission, objectives very easily, right? That type of culture. And so if you refer to the answers, right, uh, in the question number 9, yeah, here. So see, sorry, the answers are there. So yeah, so they can increase their operational efficiency. They can, comply with all the regulatory requirements, and they can do the better decision making. Uh, so then there's no you know, exact answers for this type of a question. So you can build up your answers based on the understanding that you gain on the subject, right? Um, and then the benefits of embedding ERM, so operational benefits, governance benefits, and alignment of risk with the strategic goals. So you can write down any of the benefits that that one you can directly get from the study text. But here, so you need to, things and organize your answer. There's no direct answer that you can get from the study text or the things that you learn, but you need to build up your answer connecting it with the given scenario. um, and yeah, yeah, so now I would like to take your questions, right? So in the question, yeah, I have addressed most of these questions. How many marks will the questions be in the exam? So I showed you in the pilot paper. I hope that you all have downloaded the pilot paper. And there's another important question asking whether doing only past papers is enough for the exam, right? So there is a concern again for you to do the past papers, or before you download the past papers and do the past papers, you need to study the content first. So you need to get yourself familiar with the study content, right? That means you need to study the study content and then download the question papers and attempt the question. First do your study, then download the past papers and have your own answers first. Don't first look at the suggested answers, right? Have your own answers, and then once you're done, so it's better to set up the time and do your uh, write your answers right with the timing, and then Once you're done with that, so cross-check your answers with the suggested answers. Why? That actually gives you an opportunity to test your understanding first, right? So if you, at the very first time, if you go to, check the question paper and suggested answers, so that won't, improve your thinking, right? The question paper is there, suggested answers is there, you're just looking at these two, right? That won't improve your thinking or your, understanding on this context. Instead, you need to first have your own work, right? It enable you to think, oh, this type of question. So to which part I should refer in the study text, right? So how I can reflect my learning into this given case. So you can, improve your understanding, improve your, application skills, your thinking, and then you can apply it into uh, the given scenario. And once you have your own answers, then you can cross check with the suggested answers and get an idea about your level, right? So you can have your own self assessment. And the other important thing of doing this is, so you can kind of have a self assessment about you, and that self assessment build up your confidence about the examination. You don't want to feel any fear about examinations when it close to exam day, right? අර අපිට එනවනේ විභාග බය කියලා. විභාග භීතිකාවක් නේද? එහෙම එන්නේ නැහැ. If you have done this homework, so that gives you that confidence that I am ready for the exams. I am confident on the learning content. I'm confident on addressing the questions. So with that confidence, so you can sit for the examination. That's really important, right? And yeah, so there's some other questions too. What are the topic excluded in previous syllabus so that we can omit those questions when doing the past papers? Uh, yeah, so when it comes to first chapter, in first chapter, certain aspects we excluded, like what are the type of business organizations. So earlier in the previous syllabus, we were discussing about this, partnership, limited liability companies. So that type of things we excluded, that content we excluded. I'm not exactly remember what others are. Uh, but most of the time, when you compared with the previous syllabus, the previous past papers, you can find out most of the relevant questions, right? So for this new two chapters, I show you um, those are newly added, the internal auditing chapter and ERM. So for those two, better to refer to the pilot paper to get an idea. And so regarding the excluded item from last time, there wasn't that much actually, right? So don't worry about that. So what you can do is, so when you studied a particular topic, so go back. I think now you don't have sometimes, but so some lecturers they are sharing, linking your study context with the past papers for this topic. So these are the questions. So if you have timing, I think now you don't have enough time. So at the very first time, so you can have that kind of work in Excel. So you put all the chapters and then map the question papers for this chapter. These are the questions that came under 2025 exam, 2024 exam. So likewise, you can have that kind of a summary. And then every time you can link your discussion, your understanding with the past paper, relevant past paper questions, right? If you have time, do that assessment sometimes. So your lecturers, they also would help you in that perspective. Uh, so there's another very important question asking, do we need to use the same complex words which are there in study text when writing answers? So it's okay to use simple words. It's better to use your own viewpoint, your own understanding. But since this is a technical subject, right? So you need to use that, technical jargon too, right? So auditing language, right? So you need to use the auditing language because then so you can convince the examiner, that means those who mark the paper, they would realize based on the language that you have used in writing the paper or in organizing your answers, they would realize that you know the subject. So it's a very good way of convincing the paper marking people that you know the subject, right? So it's not that you need to take the whatever the content in the study text as it is to the answer script, but you should be able to show them that you know the subject. Take some auditing language. So take some auditing, words, right? Like qualified opinion, emphasis of matter paragraph. So that type of keywords, so you need, it's a must. So you need to bring them. But it's not that everything you need to, explain in using technical words. So you are free to use your own language, but better to use those keywords, right? So key auditing terms when you are answering, because it gives you that benefit that you are going to convince the examiner that you know the subject, you are familiar with the subject, you are familiar with the given context, right? So that is really important. um, so the one another question asking, is it beneficial for referring to the old syllabus past paper and books helps us to do upcoming exams? So past paper, yes, of course, you can get an understanding about how the examiner would test your understanding. And the books, I would not recommend to refer the books. Instead, use the latest versions of study text and the other learning material that you get from your learning partners, right? Um, or that the institute that you are getting, the support. And how many SLUs are excluded? SLUs are not excluded because, like I told you earlier, there's no any revisions made to SLAUS when it comes to audit reporting. Though SLUS 700 series of audit reporting, those are so you can use as it is. And audit planning, SLUS 300 series, audit evidence, SLUS 500, 501. So those auditing standard are same. Okay, there's no any changes to have auditing standard. So the standards are same. No that revision. A little bit introductions of SLFRS S1, SLFRS S2, and ISSA 5000. Just mentioning it, you don't want to have a deep understanding about those standards. Yeah, so other than that, those other standards, and also when it comes to internal auditing chapter, there's a new introduction on internal auditing related standards. Yeah, and also this course of framework. Other than that, the auditing standards are same. Any key strategies to study to pass the exam? So you need to study really well, and then you need to do your homework. The homework means, so now next few days, so you can spend effectively to test your understanding. Download at least fast 5 to 10 past papers with the suggested answers and do that homework, right? Before the exam, and build that your confidence and go for the exam. And every time when read, nowadays you have a lot of sources, so you can Google everything and get more understanding about it. So if you are not that much clear about a concept, so find out simple examples to get more understanding about it. If you are not understanding about risk appetite, then search on, give me a simple examples to understand this. Then you can use AI, the chat GPT even. So ask from ChatGPT to give me a simple examples to understand this. So that gives you, very simple understanding for you to understand that concept if you are not that much clear about certain aspect. So that is how you can effectively use AI for your learning journey, right? Uh, yeah. So any other questions? I'm happy to take if you have any other concerns, any other clarifications. Yeah. The one other thing, so don't expect that so you get a direct questions from the study text or what you have learned. Sometimes in some cases, so you might need to, connect few concepts that you learn to build up a, answer, right? That also should be, in your mind. Uh, it's sometimes some questions so you won't get directly from the points that you learn. Instead you should connect certain concepts that you learn together to build up a comprehensive answer, right? So that is also there. Can you revise easy areas that come from the exam repeatedly? Actually, I'm not having that exact understanding about this. That is why I ask you to have that, kind of analysis. So right? List down the topic and then map it with the question papers to identify the patterns, right? Especially definitely from risk assessment, audit reporting. So those areas are really important, and consider about that weightage given for each chapter. So that gives you an understanding about, the weightage for the exams too, right? So that is another hint that you can use. ඒ කියන්නේ 125ක් 20ක් වගේ තියෙන chapters වලින් වැඩි ප්‍රවණතාවයක් තියෙනවා ප්‍රශ්න එන්න. So take that idea too, right? Uh, yeah. Yeah, any other questions? If we give points answer to explain type of question, is that gain marks? So the question here is, now you need to get yourself familiar with the action verbs in the questions, right? So especially, so in each exam question papers, the action verb list you can find out. So let me show you. Yeah, see here, this is the action verb. So these action verbs are included in each question. See, compare, distinguish, examine, outline. See the definitions and your expectations. So break down information. If it is analyzed, break down information into key parts for better understanding. If it is, the question required to distinguish, see, identify what makes things different from each other. So in each question, so you can find out these action verbs. So see here, explain, then recommend, and see here, yeah, will discuss, explain, and then uh, yeah, see those action verbs and get kind of an understanding what should I do under each action verb. So if it is calculate, give the numerical process. And if it is, illustrate, support explanation, right? So see now in each question, so you have given certain marks. So with the marks allocation, you can get the, the depth of your idea about the depth of your answer that should be. Now here explain, it gives you 4 marks. Explain internal audit process. To gain a 4 marks, you need to explain it to certain extent. Just, list down the process that won't give you the full marks. You may gain, let's say, 2 marks or 1 marks, just listing down the process. But the question asks you to explain. So you need to little bit explain the answer to earn full marks. Right? So that is another important aspect. So, can you give any substitute way of studying without the new syllabus book? Um, uh, I think so. If you are not, attending any classes, this is the only way that you can, get an understanding about the topics. So I know the content is really, mm, deep, but you can have your own short notes, right? And like, so there are a lot of other sources who take the content from or the structure from the study text and certain examples, certain calculations given from the study text, and you can further, develop your understanding through engaging with certain other sources available online, right? But the key material is the study text. Okay, then I think I have addressed all the questions that you have asked uh, through the chat box, right? And so that marks the end of the today's session. And so I take this opportunity to wish you all the very best with your examination, right? So spend your time effectively for the next couple of weeks or next few days. So and so you will be able to, do your best in the examination. And I wish you all the very best. And thank you for joining with us.